I never thought I'd be sitting in a courthouse, signing a marriage license with a woman I barely knew, but here I was, pen in hand, heart pounding, nerves shot to hell. "You're thinking too much," Ivy whispered beside me, her voice laced with amusement. Of course she found this funny. She was completely calm, her signature already inked onto the paper like this was just another Tuesday. I exhaled, forcing myself to focus, but my hand still trembled slightly as I pressed the pen to the page. This was insane. Completely and utterly insane. But I had no choice. A month ago, I had received the worst possible news. My visa was expiring. After years of building my life here, after establishing a career, friendships, a home, I was about to be forced to pack up and leave. I had spent weeks trying to find a solution, consulting lawyers, searching for any loophole that would let me stay. But there was none. Not unless I got married. And that's when Ivy came into the picture. She was my roommate's best friend, a serial commitment phobe, allergic to relationships, and yet the only person willing to go along with this ridiculous plan. She had smirked when I first asked her, like the idea of marrying me was some kind of thrilling social experiment. "A fake marriage," she had said, arms crossed, head tilted. "That sounds incredibly illegal. Let's do it." And now, here we were, legally married, bound together by paperwork, necessity, and a complete disregard for how much of a disaster this could turn into. The judge gave us a brief, polite smile as he stamped the final approval. "Congratulations. You're officially married." Ivy turned to me, that damn smirk still playing at the corners of her lips. "You hear that, wifey? We did it." My stomach twisted. I still wasn't used to hearing that. "Yeah," I muttered, shoving the pen back onto the table. "We did." The moment we stepped outside, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "That was hot." Ivy interrupted, grinning. I shot her a look. I was going to say stressful. Tomato. I rolled my eyes, but I couldn't ignore the way my body reacted whenever she threw that damn smirk my way. I had to get a grip. This wasn't real. None of this was real. The next step was moving in together. It had to be convincing. We needed proof of a shared residence, financial entanglement, a life built together. We had planned everything down to the last detail, making sure we'd pass any interviews or inspections. But there was one thing we hadn't accounted for. Ivy. More specifically, the way Ivy was completely impossible to ignore. The first night in our shared apartment, I realized how much trouble I was in. She was everywhere. In my space, in my thoughts, in my goddamn senses. She walked around without a care in the world, completely at ease in our new situation, while I was trying not to have a full-blown identity crisis. She tossed her bag onto the couch, stretching her arms above her head, her tank top riding up just enough to show a sliver of bare skin. I looked away. Immediately. "So, babe," she teased, throwing herself onto the couch dramatically. "If you enjoyed this content and want to support the channel in a special way, try clicking the thanks button below. It's the one with the heart and $ icon. With super thanks, you can make a direct contribution to the channel, which helps me keep creating awesome videos for you. Should we start acting like a married couple now? Maybe cuddle up, tell each other deep, dark secrets?" I folded my arms, desperately ignoring the warmth creeping up my neck. "You don't have deep, dark secrets." Ivy shrugged. "You don't know that. Maybe I'm secretly a spy." I sighed, dropping onto the couch beside her. More like a menace to society. She laughed, tilting her head slightly. "You know, if you keep insulting me, our marriage is never going to last." I shot her a dry look. "Our marriage isn't real, Ivy." Her smirk didn't fade. Not yet. My heart skipped. This was going to be a disaster. And I had a very, very bad feeling that I wasn't going to make it out of this unscathed. I had survived 1 week of marriage, and it was already becoming painfully clear that I was in over my head. Ivy had made herself comfortable way too fast, treating our new shared apartment like she had lived there forever, sprawling across the couch, leaving her shoes wherever she pleased, walking around in nothing but a tank top and sleep shorts like it was no big deal. And maybe it wouldn't have been if I wasn't in constant danger of losing my mind every time she so much as looked at me. The problem was she was too good at this. Too good at making this marriage look real. Too natural in the way she casually touched me in front of others, throwing an arm around my shoulders, brushing her fingers against mine when she handed me a glass of water, calling me babe in that effortless, teasing voice. She was playing the role of the affectionate wife so well that even I was starting to believe it. And then there was the worst part, the interview. We had known it was coming. The immigration officer had scheduled it, and we had spent days rehearsing our answers, memorizing every little detail of our relationship to make sure we passed as a real couple. But none of that could have prepared me for what actually happened. We arrived at the office, and Ivy was annoyingly calm. They're going to separate us, I reminded her, my leg bouncing under the table as we waited. We have to make sure our stories match. Ivy smirked. Relax, wifey. We got this. I swallowed hard. That damn smirk. I hated how easily she got under my skin, how effortless she made this whole thing seem. I was a nervous wreck, and she was sitting there like this was some kind of game she knew she was going to win. The officer called me in first. I took a deep breath and stepped inside. The man across the desk barely looked up as he flipped through my file.
So,
how did you and Ivy meet?
Easy.
We had rehearsed this.
I forced myself to relax.
At a mutual friend's party. We got stuck in the kitchen together and ended up talking all night. He nodded, jotting something down. And who said, I love you first? My stomach flipped. We hadn't practiced that. I panicked. I did. The officer raised an eyebrow. Romantic.
God help me.
The questions continued. Who cooks more? Who does the laundry? How she takes her coffee? What side of the bed she sleeps on? I answered them all, my pulse hammering the entire time, my hands sweating under the table. And then, the final question. What's Ivy's favorite thing about you? I froze.
What?
I blinked, my mind completely blank. We hadn't rehearsed that. I had no idea what she would say. I scrambled for something, anything. She says I worry too much, but that it's cute? The officer stared at me for a long, long moment. Then he nodded. All right, send your wife in. I stepped out, my heart still racing. Ivy raised an eyebrow. How bad was it? I exhaled. Not terrible. Your turn. She winked. Wish me luck, babe. I watched her walk in, trying to convince myself that the sudden warmth in my chest was just nerves and not something much, much worse. 20 minutes later, she came out grinning. Nailed it. I blinked. That fast. She shrugged. What can I say? I'm a great wife. I groaned. You're insufferable. She looped her arm through mine, pulling me toward the exit. And yet, you're stuck with me. I should have pulled away, but I didn't. And the worst part? I didn't want to. I had survived the interview, but now I had a new problem. The government wasn't done with us yet. We had passed the first round, but there were still follow-ups, home visits, surprise inspections. They wanted proof. Proof that this marriage wasn't fake. Proof that Ivy and I were really in love. And that meant one thing. We had to step it up. Living together was one thing. Convincing the world we were a married couple was another. And Ivy? Ivy was having way too much fun with it. You need to start acting like you adore me, she said one night, leaning against the kitchen counter, a teasing smirk playing at her lips. I shot her a glare. I already do. She sked, stepping closer. Too close. No, sweetheart. You like me. You tolerate me. But you don't look at me like you're head over heels, hopelessly in love. Can't breathe without me. I scoffed. Because I'm not. Her lips curled into something wicked. Then I guess we should practice. My stomach flipped. Practice? Ivy had no idea what she was doing to me. Or maybe she did. Because that's when she started touching me more. Little things. Subtle. Small gestures that should have meant nothing. A hand on my lower back as she passed me in the kitchen. A gentle touch on my wrist when she wanted my attention. A casual, fleeting brush of her fingers against mine when we walked side by side. And worse, she made it look effortless. Meanwhile, I was losing my damn mind. Ivy was too good at this. Too good at pretending. Too good at making my heart race with every little thing she did. And it all came crashing down one night. We were at a friend's party, playing the role of the perfect married couple, surrounded by people who didn't know the truth. Ivy was leaning into it hard, laughing at my jokes, letting her fingers trail absently over my arm, resting her hand on my thigh like it was the most natural thing in the world. I could feel eyes on us, people watching, evaluating. And I knew it was working. Then someone said, "You two are so cute together. You just look like you belong." And Ivy turned to me and gave me this look.
Soft.
Open. Like she was actually seeing me. Like maybe, just maybe, this wasn't fake for her either. And before I could stop myself, before I could think, I leaned in. And I kissed her. Right there. In front of everyone. And she kissed me back. Not a fake kiss. Not something for show. A real kiss. A dangerous kiss. The kind of kiss that could ruin everything. I had made a mistake. A huge, irreversible, life-altering mistake. I had kissed my fake wife like she was my real one, and now I couldn't take it back. Ivy hadn't pulled away. She hadn't laughed or turned it into a joke. No, she had kissed me back, slow and deep, her fingers curling around my wrist, her body leaning into mine like it was instinct. And for those few seconds, those reckless, terrifying, breathtaking few seconds, nothing had felt fake at all. And that was the problem. Because this was supposed to be an arrangement, a legal agreement, a means to an end, not whatever this was turning into. The ride home was quiet, uncomfortably so. I could feel Ivy watching me from the passenger seat, like she was waiting for me to say something, to acknowledge what had happened. But I couldn't, because if I said it out loud, then it was real. When we finally got home, I went straight to the kitchen, pretending I needed water, when really, I just needed a second to breathe. But Ivy followed me. I heard her step closer, felt the shift in the air between us. "You're freaking out," she said, her voice too calm, too knowing. I scoffed, keeping my back to her. "I'm not freaking out." She leaned against the counter, completely unfazed. So, the kiss meant nothing? I gripped the glass in my hand. It was for show. Silence. Then, soft laughter. I turned, glaring. "What?" Ivy smirked. "You're a terrible liar." My heart skipped. I hated how easily she saw through me. How she could read every single thought in my head before I even had time to process them. I set my glass down, exhaling sharply. "We can't do this." She raised an eyebrow. "Do what?" I gestured between us, frustration bubbling under my skin. "Whatever this is." We agreed this was fake. Ivy studied me for a long moment. Then, slowly, she stepped closer. Close enough that I could smell her perfume, close enough that my breath caught in my throat. "Then why do you look at me like it's real?" I had no answer for that. She reached up, lightly tracing her fingers down my arm, and I swore I stopped breathing. "Tell me to stop," she whispered. I couldn't, because the truth was, I didn't want her to. I was supposed to say no. I was supposed to step back, remind Ivy that this was an arrangement, a contract, a legal loophole. But I didn't. Because when she whispered, "Tell me to stop," I couldn't. I just stood there, heart hammering, brain screaming, body frozen as her fingers barely traced my skin, setting fire to every inch she touched. She was testing me. She knew she was winning. And that's what scared me the most. I swallowed hard, forcing out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "Ivy," she tilted her head, waiting. I should have told her this was a mistake. I should have pulled away. I should have said something, anything to put distance between us. But then she stepped even closer, so close our bodies were barely a breath apart, and all I could focus on was her. The curve of her lips, the warmth of her skin, the way her eyes flickered down, then back up, like she was daring me to make a move. "You think too much," she murmured. I let out a shaky laugh because God, wasn't that the truth? Ivy reached up, lightly tugging the collar of my shirt, her fingers barely brushing against my collarbone. "You kissed me first," she reminded me. My stomach flipped. I was trying to sell the marriage. Her smirk deepened. Sell it to who? Silence. Because the truth was, no one had been watching. No one had needed that kiss.
It had been instinct.
It had been real. And Ivy? She knew it. I exhaled sharply, finally stepping back, needing space before I completely lost my grip. This can't happen. Her gaze darkened, but she didn't argue. She just studied me, waiting, watching. "I can't fall for you," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. This was never supposed to be real. She didn't flinch. She didn't laugh. She didn't tease. She just looked at me. And then, after a long pause, she said, "Maybe it already is." And just like that, I knew I was screwed. I had spent weeks convincing myself that this wasn't real, that Ivy was just playing a role, that our marriage was nothing more than paperwork and necessity, that everything, the teasing, the lingering touches, the way she looked at me like she saw something I wasn't ready to admit, was all part of the act. But standing here, staring at her after she had just said, "Maybe it already is," I felt something crack deep inside me. I had lost control. Ivy wasn't playing anymore.
And neither was I.
I swallowed hard, desperately trying to ignore the way my heart was pounding, the way my body was practically screaming at me to close the space between us. "You don't mean that." She didn't even blink. "Yes, I do." I exhaled sharply, running a hand through my hair, trying to keep myself together. This was supposed to be fake. Ivy stepped forward, slow, deliberate, the way a storm rolls in right before it completely wrecks everything in its path. "Then tell me it is," she challenged, her voice softer now, but still just as dangerous. "Tell me it doesn't mean anything to you." My breath hitched. I couldn't say it, because it would be a lie. She took another step, her fingers lightly brushing against mine, sending a shiver down my spine. "Tell me you don't think about me when I'm not around." I clenched my jaw. Silence. "Tell me that kiss meant nothing." More silence. "Tell me," she whispered, her lips dangerously close to mine now, "that you don't want me." And that was it. That was the moment I lost the war. I didn't think. I didn't second guess. I just grabbed her and kissed her like I had been starving for her. And maybe I had. Maybe I had been fighting this for so long that I had forgotten what it felt like to want something so badly it hurt. Ivy didn't hesitate. She kissed me back instantly, pulling me against her, deepening it, making it clear that she had been waiting for this just as much as I had. And in that moment, nothing else mattered. Not the arrangement. Not the paperwork. Not the fact that we had spent so much time pretending that we had forgotten what was real and what wasn't. Because this was real. And maybe it had been from the start. When we finally pulled apart, breathless, flushed, changed, Ivy grinned against my lips. "You finally caught up." I let out a breathless laugh, shaking my head, because of course she would say something like that. "You're impossible." She smirked, her fingers still curled around the back of my neck. "Yeah, but you love me anyway." I froze, my stomach flipping. Not in fear, not in panic, in certainty. Because I did. I really, really did. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't scared to say it. I cupped her face, looking directly into her eyes, letting her see everything I had spent so long trying to ignore. "Yeah," I admitted, finally, completely, without hesitation. "I love you." Her smirk softened into something else. Something deeper. Something real. And when she kissed me again, slow and deliberate, I knew, without a doubt, that we weren't pretending anymore. We never had been.